Welcome back to HISD Unscripted. My name is Esquivel, and today I have Dr. Carter with me to address some of the questions that we've been seeing in our community and especially on our Facebook page about the potential bond. Now, I want to reiterate at the time of this recording, a decision has not been made by the board whether or not to go out for the bond, and neither have any of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. None of that is finalized. All of this that we're going to be talking about is board decision, and we really don't have the authority to make those decisions. And so we're just going to be talking about what the facilities committee has, brought up and what we're kind of looking at. But just wanted to make that clear before we even get into anything. So let's backtrack to last year and talk about the VATRE. So some of the questions that I've been seeing are like, where did that VATRE money go? We talked about all the places that it could go before the election. And then when it passed, we were able to receive that money. Talk about like how much we got, why it wasn't exactly what we were thinking, and then where it all went and where it's, probably going to go here in the future.
If you do your own math, 3 cents is what we went out for. Those 3 cents were compressed by 1.6 cents. So what does that leave?
1.5 million.
Correct. No, it leaves 1.4 cents at the higher rate. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at $638,000 a penny, when you multiply that, you end up getting about 1.5 million, not 1.9 million. So the compression affected it immediately. With Governor Abbott's new platform for running, he's already promised somewhere between 4 and 6 cents further reduction, which means that the VATRE money has already been compressed. Now, we got 1.5 million. But we also used, I think it was around $687,000 of that to give all staff members $1,000.
Except for the superintendent.
Except for the superintendent. But we gave all staff $1,000. So that leaves us somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 left. We've already said, the board has already said they want to give $500 retention in August to those staff members that return. That's going to cost about $400,000. So that's going to leave us in the neighborhood of $400,000 left out of the VATRE money. But we've used it exactly the way we said we would for staff retention, and those kinds of things. If we have the ability to add some of that $400,000 or $500,000 left over to the base salary of the lowest hourly rate, then that's what we'll do in June for next year. So we're using the VATRE money exactly how we said we would use it. And anyone that wants to know that can come up and get a copy of what we've done to date out of that function code.
Well, and I think also it's important to note that we can't give raises whenever we want to. Those have to be a certain time of year. Am I correct on that?
We do a salary study, and we do the math on whether or not we can actually do anything starting in May, June, July.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually present that in July. I try to present it in June so that we can get a big picture of what's coming. But we have to determine whether we can even afford to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that once a year.
Well, and so much of the conversation, I think, is centered around the compression and how our school taxes school taxes, right? Yeah, school taxes is going to continue to be compressed, especially if Abbott, gets his reelection here soon.
Well, part of his platform is that he's going to eliminate the M&O side of property taxes, which means where we are now is going to be reduced to zero if he has his way. The problem with that is the state funding that kicks in to balance that out, what they used to call the Robin Hood program, doesn't balance out penny for penny. In fact, it's way less than penny for penny. And so the mantra that he's out there now telling everybody is schools need to learn to do more with less because that's what's coming. And so in reality, when pennies get compressed, when the tax rate goes, property rates go down for the school side. But I don't know if you noticed or not, your city, your county, your state taxes have all increased, which that money has to come from somewhere in order to continue to fund schools. And so while he may be saying he's eliminating property taxes, those taxes are coming somewhere else.
So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about where the VATRE money went, you can always come up and talk to us. We'll show you the books. We'll answer any question that you have about it. We're still being completely transparent and open during the whole process, and we're not lying to you. That
No.
was one of the comments we saw. We didn't lie.
No.
If you want to be specific on what we lied to you about, I guess come talk to us. So now let's get into the big discussion. So it's now all over the internet about that the school is looking at doing a bond for specifically a new high school, and then maybe a couple other things also included in that. So we have had public meetings. I want to reiterate that these have been public meetings that have gone out to the whole community. These are not private meetings. Everyone is invited. All of our families, all of our community members, any stakeholders in the district have been welcome to come. We have had 3 so far. These started in December, and we had our most recent one just a couple weeks ago. And so what we've proposed to the facility committee or in these public meetings is, we need a new high school. That is not something new. Everybody has known about this. Everybody to somewhat degree agrees that we kind of need a new high school. It's been the same as it has from back when parents and grandparents have even gone to school there. And now we are facing major issues, structurally, foundationally, in our plumbing, and just so many issues throughout the school where it's becoming just a major issue on our finances and then on just the daily lives of our students and staff that are over there. And so we just kind of want to address some of the comments that we've seen online and kind of clear up some of the fake information that seems to be floating around out there. And, let's just kind of get into that. So, right now what you've seen is that we're proposing $150 million. Where did that number come from? And kind of talk about the process of that.
Well, that's not just for a high school, and it's not an additional high school. We're only having one high school in Hereford. We don't have enough kids to have 2 or 3. And so we've had to look at where can we build, what can we do, and where will it fit. And one of the big things is the CTE buildings are still relatively new compared to everything else. And it's in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 million just to replace those with what's in them and what they have. Because it's a great facility. If you haven't been in it, you should go see it. So that being the anchor, the decision by the facilities committee was to build around where we are and demolish what's there. We're not planning to keep any of that except the triple gym and the old cafeteria. And again, all of these are board decisions. These are board conversations that will take place if the bond passes over the next year or so to determine exactly what we're going to build and where we're going to put it, what has to be moved. So when you look at the budget for a new high school is around, at the worst scenarios, around $127 million. And I know that some are saying, well, Canyon built West Plains for $80 million. That was in 2018. And again, I'll let y'all do the math. At 1% a month, which is what construction costs have gone up since 2018 to 2026, that bond today would cost over $150 million to build that high school. And so we're right in line, except we're about, $23 million less, or $33 million less. So the high school portion is somewhere in the neighborhood of $127 million. And that's using the square footage by $550 a square foot. Okay.
And then I want to add on the square foot real quick is that number is coming from construction professionals that have been
Correct.
out building schools in our area and all up and down the state of Texas, as well as a comment made during one of the facilities committee meetings from a local contractor that is also in the industry of building like commercial type buildings. And so that number is not just something we pulled from nowhere. There is a lot of research and a lot of history that goes behind that number to support that.
Correct. That's correct. Part of the other things that we want to do is to put safe rooms at each elementary, and those will double as multi-purpose facilities so that you can have lunch in the cafeteria at the proper time and with the proper length. Right now, they're so cram-packed in there, it's hard to get lunch served in 30 minutes for all the different things. And so we know they need a PE room. We know they need a place to go. We also know they need a safe room. If we have a tornado or a huge hailstorm like you had a few years ago, we don't want them inside the buildings. We want them in a safe place. And so the proposed addition of 6 safe rooms, 1 at Tierra Blanca, 4 at the elementary schools, 1 at the junior high, is 6. They're in the neighborhood of about $3 million apiece. Then you've got renovations that need to take place at other places. You've got demolition costs. You have all kinds of things that go into that budget. We will present that budget on February 12th to show them or to demonstrate to the board that we need to go out for that large amount. And again, these are recommendations by the facilities committee, not recommendations by me, recommendations by the facility committee that's been meeting. And we've actually been talking about this since the time of the VATRE. So we've been talking about it over a year now, getting these things in place, to get ready to either go out for this bond or wait another year. But the problem with waiting is 1% right now, 1% a month escalation in construction cost. So if you go out a year, this bond is going to cost 12% more. You wait 2 years, it's going to cost 24% more. And I'll let y'all do the math on what that would be.
So I know that has been a big topic as well, as why don't we just wait? What's our urgency behind going out for the bond already? And as someone who likes to keep her money and works hard for the money like we all do, I would prefer, us being able to save money wherever we can. We all know that we need a new high school. There's been conversations, especially in these public meetings that we have, that it's when, just based on what we've shown them and what we have found out just about, the life expectancy of the high school and all the issues we're having going on over there. And so, we could wait, but it's going to cost a lot more. Several million is going to cost. It's more than several million. I think we calculated that if we waited 2 years, it was going to be close to $186 million.
Correct.
For the exact same stuff that we could get right now. And, that difference is going to make a big difference in people's pockets and in our taxpayers. And so we want to just make sure that, we're doing the best in our due diligence as a school to make sure that we're providing our students with what they need, but also being mindful of our taxpayers. And so that's kind of why we're going out for it, or we've talked about going out for it now, since no decision has been officially made yet. And just where we're kind of coming from. Also, let's talk a little bit about the urgency too on just what is happening at the high school. I know this last weekend, Miss Alonzo, our high school principal, sent us a picture of a wall all busted out because there was literally running water behind the wall. I think in the beginning of the day, she sent us a video and you could hear water like rushing behind the wall. And so they ended up having to go in and bust all that out. And they found holes, they found cracked pipes. I don't know. It's a whole mess, and it has made a big old mess. The teacher's lounge is currently looks like, I don't know, something went off in there. It's not a fun environment to go into, I think.
And that was an interior wall too, not an exterior wall. And so that illustrates the plumbing issues that are starting to take place inside the high school all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing she mentioned was that she got to school the other day about 7 o'clock in the morning, and water was coming up out of the drains in the bathrooms, and there weren't even any kids there.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a city issue where the plumbing's backing up into our building, or is that an issue underneath our plumbing where it has to go somewhere? And so it's coming back up.
And then another picture she sent on the same day, actually, was one of the offices downstairs looked like it was becoming a beachfront property because there was water just all in the carpet, and they were still trying to figure out where that was coming from.
That's correct.
And I just want to reiterate that these are in different parts of the building. This isn't just because, it's, connected to the teacher's lounge and it's that same issue. These are completely separate issues. And then we all know about the bathrooms and how they are just backing up. There's sewer smelling in the halls. And I don't know about y'all, but I think it would be super hard to learn algebra whenever all I'm smelling is sewer gas all day. In the history hall, my husband works in the history department, and he just talks about how bad it smells in there. And just, I don't know, that's not a fun environment to work in. That's not a fun environment to go to school in. In my opinion, these kids need better. You wouldn't want to send your child to somewhere where they have to smell sewer gas all day. You wouldn't want to work somewhere that you smell sewer gas all day. And, when we talk about teacher retention and we're bringing them into a high school that is literally falling apart and telling them, this is what you get. This is the smell you get to smell every day. Thanks for being in Hereford ISD. At what point do we kind of draw a line and be like, this is enough. They deserve better.
I think it's time to draw the line, but again, that's going to be a board decision on February the 12th, whether we call this bond or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be up to the community in the first Saturday in May to determine whether or not we actually do it. The problem with waiting is escalation, but the other thing is there's 7 other schools that are almost in the same spot because they're about the same age, and those things are starting to happen. And so, you have to start somewhere. At the last meeting, there was a gentleman that kept talking about a 72-year-old building's not that old. And that might be true for a house. I've lived in older houses too that have been well kept. And, you're talking about maybe 3,000 square feet that you're trying to keep up as opposed to 156,000 square feet. And you don't have 1,189 kids going through it every day, using the restrooms, using the facilities, being in the classrooms, the HVAC off and on all the time. Those are things that are going to wear a building out quicker. And when you're at 72 years, you're at the limit.
Mm-hmm.
For generally everything, you're at the limit.
So our construction consultants actually told us that the lifespan of sewer, like plumbing, is about 50 to 60 years.
Correct.
And so our high school is turning 73 years old this year. So it's kind of reached that lifespan. It's way past it.
Correct.
And then I also want to point out, excuse me. I also want to point out that some people are saying that, well, we just haven't taken that good of care of our high school. But, if it has lasted 73 years and it's past its lifespan, I think that we have been taking care of it. It's still a building that kids can go learn in. It's just kind of we're getting to a point where, I don't know, it's just not fun to learn in, I guess, fun to teach in. But, our custodians over there, they do a great job keeping it clean. Our maintenance team, they seem to be always over there working on something, making sure doors are locking, panels are getting replaced when they need to be. And it's just an ongoing process. And I think that is, another part why we are kind of pushing for this bond, because we're always pouring money into that building. So much money is being poured into to just Band-Aid issues. I know we talked about the other day, we've spent already $40,000 this year just on the bathrooms alone at Hereford High School. And so at what point do we stop putting Band-Aids on everything? At what point do we stop dumping money and, according to the kids that we talked to, wasting money at the high school to just get a new one?
Right.
And so another topic, we're kind of talking about the urgency of the high school. I think we need to talk about the timeline on when it would be completed. And so talk about that. What would be the timeline look like if the board decided to go out for a bond and if the community voted it in May?
It would take 9 months to a year to finish the architectural designs because they're not going to start until the bond is funded. And so that'll be the first thing. There are things that can be done, but the main portion of the high school will then start construction the second year and take at least a year. So I would say probably at least 3 years total.
And so that's another 3 years that we have to keep our high school in usable shape for the kids to be able to go in and learn successfully in. And so if we push it back even a year or 2 years, we're looking into the 2030s on
Correct.
whenever we have a new high school. That is another, 4, 5, 6 years
Right.
of us needing to be able to still use our high school.
I think the other thing that was raised and talked about was why can't you renovate what you have? And the first thing you have to realize is if you touch an old building that's grandfathered in, the first thing that has to happen is everything has to be brought up to ADA compliance. That's going to cost a little bit of money just to bring it up to compliance.
A lot of it of money.
We're not talking about excavating the plumbing lines. We're not talking about tearing out all the electrical. We're not talking about redoing all the infrastructure in the walls and up in the ceilings and between the floors and all of that. We're just talking about ADA compliance. And ADA compliance is huge. Right now, our building is grandfathered in, and there's certain things we don't have to do. And the other thing I think that's important is where would we put 1,189 students? Where are we going to house them while all this reconstruction takes place, renovation takes place? You know, that's a huge issue. You know, how many portables would we have to buy, and then what would we do with those portables? Where would we put those portables? How would we plumb those portables? How would we get electrical into those portables? And so you're talking about a huge undertaking just to renovate what we have, because it won't happen in 3 months over the summer. It would take probably a year, maybe even 18 months to renovate that high school.
Well, and also too, like, it's not just like cosmetic renovations. Like,
No.
they would have to drill down the whole length of the main hallway back into the history portion, into the science portions, just to fix the plumbing. Then that's not talking about like our second floor, everything in the walls that seems to be going on. It's, you know, that's just the main portion. And then, you know, you're talking about foundational, you're drilling into the foundation when we're already kind of having foundation issues, and it could create more problems than what it's worth just to knock it down and build a new one.
Well, I think they could do it. You know, the bones of the structure are probably good, but how much is that going to cost? That's a great question. You know, I would guess somewhere between 15 and 30, maybe 15 and 40 million dollars just to spend 18 months trying to fix what we have. And I'm not sure that would fix everything.
Well, and that does not include the cost of the portables and relocating everyone, moving all of the stuff out of high school and putting it into the portables, and just the logistics of all that. Plus, we have to make sure those portables are in a secure location because we need to keep our kids safe.
Correct.
And they need access to CTE, and they need access to a cafeteria, and it's just a lot.
Well, I know the last time I looked at a double-sided portable, it was over $100,000 for a new one. And that's, you know, start figuring that out at 1,189 students, just the cost on that.
How many students would fit in a portable?
Well, you could probably get 25 on either side, or maybe 50.
Oh, that'd be a lot.
That'd be a lot of portables.
That would be a lot of portables. I don't even know where we'd put them.
No, I mean, we've got some acreage, but that's way far away from CTE.
And it has no plumbing, no electricity.
Not right now, it doesn't.
Nothing on it. Okay, well, there's that information. Anything else on the urgency?
I mean, you know, to me, you look at where we are and what we have a whole bunch of school buildings that are to the point of needing construction, not just high school, but Aikman, some of the other campuses that are around the same age. They don't have the same problems yet, but they are around the same age, and those problems are going to creep up. And then we're, you know, behind the 8 ball trying to catch up.
So keeping in tune with the urgency, let's talk also about what could potentially be coming down the pipeline for school districts. You know, Greg Abbott has released his campaign, right? Is that what it is? For his reelection. And just some of the stuff on there is a little concerning for school districts. And so I know Carter has it printed out right here. So I'll let you kind of talk about that and why we're kind of already looking at going for this, you know, despite everything we've just talked about with the whole high school issues. Let's talk about just kind of what's could potentially be coming down from the state.
Well, my understanding, the next biennium starts in September, which means they're going to start cranking up and getting ready with all these platforms that are coming out. And one of the big ones is his reelection for November. So he has a lot of things on the table. One of them is I want to totally eliminate property taxes for school districts. I love the way for school districts. And so that's number one. The other thing, he wants a supermajority for raising tax rates. Our VATRE passed at 62%, a little less than 62, 61 point something. In order to have a supermajority, that's 66.7%. So our VATRE wouldn't have passed if the supermajority vote goes in. Same thing for bonds. Bonds generally will be in the 60% range, 65% range, but not a supermajority range, especially when you're talking about multi-million-dollar bonds. So, you know, those are things that cause me pause to think about what's coming down the pike, and to think about the fact that, you know, in 1 year from now, advancing from September 26 to September 27, when some of these things will go into effect, that could kill any bond that any public school is looking at because of the caps that are coming in. There's a 3.5% cap or lesser that he's talking about placing on capital projects and things like that. That's going to be difficult for a bond to pass. That's going to be difficult for cities to pass anything, not just schools, but it's going to be very difficult for spending and building those kinds of bonds all over. So his platform is out. It's available. I would encourage you to read it and apply it to your city, your county, and your school, and see whether or not you would agree with that platform. And I'm certainly not advocating that we don't vote for Greg Abbott. Don't go away and say I'm being political. I'm just concerned about 2 or 3 things he has on his platform, because in my opinion, they're there to kill schools. It's very true. Every political move that he's making, it's clear that he wants private schools to flourish, which is why we have the voucher bill and why that's now starting in September. He doesn't want public schools to succeed.
So let's go into vouchers for a second. I know that's a hot conversation and a good comment on like why our community thinks, well, maybe not the whole community, but several people in our community think that we should wait just to see what happens with vouchers. And I think, despite everything that we've just talked about, the age of the building, the issues at the building, the stuff coming down from the state, or I guess that could be coming down from the state within the next couple of years, why are we kind of still going or talking about going forward, even though vouchers are coming down the pipeline?
Well, I don't think vouchers are going to affect us that much. I know that our private school in town has about 30 slots available, and they're going to try to fill those slots, and they've already put advertising out trying to fill those slots. I don't want to speak against private schools, but I know public schools, we are required to have all the necessary tools in our buildings. For example, if you need to have your special ed student tested, we have diagnosticians that do that. If you need speech therapy, we have speech therapists that do that. We're not trying to contract with anybody. We don't contract with anybody. We have all the facilities and all the people in place to make sure your students are served successfully. So private school doesn't have that. We are going to be required to service the private schools in the areas of speech and some of the other areas that are even gifted and talented. We are required to help out with the testing and things that go along there. So, but as far as 30 students, if we lose 30 students at today's what our basic allotment is, that's around $186,000 that we would lose, and that's not good. We don't want to lose that, but it's not going to be crippling.
I know some of the school districts probably in the Metroplex areas will see more of an increase of students just going to private schools or into the homeschool program. But we just don't have that same.
There aren't that many private schools.
Yes, there aren't that many private schools in our area for kids to go to.
Correct.
And so, we have our one here in town, and they've been great. They work with the school district well, but I just don't think, or we just don't see it being an issue. Plus, just the conversations that we've had with our families and that our teachers have had and our curriculum team has had, there's not a lot of talk in our community about students leaving because of the voucher program. And so we don't feel like it's going to be a big issue. I know it will affect the school district a little bit here in the future, but not enough to where we have to pause on these conversations, I believe. Okay, let's go back. Let's backtrack a little bit, because we did not talk about whether or not we have to use the full $150 million. So I know that's a conversation that I've seen, is if we don't use all 150, do we still have to pay for all 150?
No, you don't.
Okay,
You
simple answer.
If you go out for a $150 million bond and your project comes back at 135, 140, you don't have to ever purchase the other $10 million. They can, we can hold them for 10 years. Then after that, they supposedly disappear, but you're not paying on those bonds until we actually purchase them and buy them down. So during this bond, I would, if it passes, I would suppose we would have 4 or 5 different times that we pull everything down. because you're not going to pull $150 million down to start. We're just not going to do that. So, the hope would be that the interest rate would go down. The interest rate could go up. So where they are when they're voted on is not the same place where they are as far as interest rate, not the same place as when you call them down. And so that's an important thing to think about too. It may be a 38-cent intention, but it may only cost 25. We just have to wait and see, because we won't use those bonds immediately. If it's a 3-year process, we'll call those bonds down over the 3 years, and that's when the INS will go up. But if these compressions continue to take place and the appraisals of our values go up, the INS rate goes down. Now, I'll give you an example. In 2018, when you passed the 2018 bond, the interest rate, the INS hit for pennies was 12 cents. It's now under 9 because of the valuations of our school district have gone up. There's conversation about some data centers coming in that are going to be huge as far as tax, foundation tax. I don't even know how to say that. Business tax. The valuations of our district are going to go up, which means the INS rate is going to go down. So if we take the full 38, we end up using the whole 150 over the course of 3 years. By the time that 3 years takes place and those data centers are built, that INS rate is going to be down. The capacity is going to be back up, and we would still be able probably to go up for another bond if we wanted to.
And I also want to add that the 150 also will include, the inflation rate.
Yes.
Our consultants and everyone that we work with throughout this whole process would add that in, so that way we don't end up in a situation where we need to go out for more money.
No, we should not be able. In fact, we should do it cheaper than what we think we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, thanks for answering that question. I just want to make a comment real quick on, you brought up the 2018 bond. That is always a topic of discussion in our comments. People always come talk to us about it. And I just want to say the field house was kind of at the same stage that the high school is right now. The plumbing was falling apart, and there was so many issues over there. And so the decisions made by the former administration were, collectively and talked about the same way that this bond is talking about. But whether you agree with it or not, we could sit and debate it all day long. There's nothing that we can do about it. We cannot go back and undo the field house. We cannot go change any decision that has been made. We just have to move forward and look at what's best for our students and our community.
Anytime we do what's best for kids and anytime we do what's best for the community, it should be a good thing. And, when we make these kinds of decisions, we're not trying to cripple anyone. We're trying to help get our students the very best that we can afford to get our students. We're trying to help the community because, you have a good school, you get the accountability rate up where it needs to be. That's going to be a draw for businesses to come into this area. And I think that's something that we're working on very, very much every day.
And just one more point that I want to add, since you brought that up, there has also been a lot of talk about our accountability and what we're doing to improve it, and we should get our accountability up before we even try to go out for a new bond. And I just want y'all to know that we are working on improving our accountability in our district. We have a great curriculum team that is just working around the clock.
We have a new curriculum team.
Curriculum team. They're great too. Let me add that in there.
No, we totally shuffled the entire curriculum team because this is not a 1-year problem. This is a decade problem. And if you go back, look at the accountability, you can see the ebbs and flows, but you can see a steady decline down. And so we've had to address those issues, and we have addressed those issues. And my hope is at the end of May, beginning of June, we get our scores that we're ticking back up to where we need to be. And then by the end of next year, all of our schools are where they should be. Mm-hmm. But that's a process. And it's one of those things that didn't happen overnight. Like I said, it was a decade. And it's not going to be fixed overnight, but we are moving in the correct direction. We're moving in the direction that we need to be moving.
So my plan is to have Chris Norton. He's our executive director over our curriculum team. I want to have him on a podcast soon, so y'all just watch out for that. and they can kind of go into a little bit more detail about what they're working on, the changes that they've made, and just the great things that they're seeing. And also, like, I want to invite our community out to board meetings. So many times our principals are sharing their data and everything there, and we are seeing improvements already. So if you're interested in any of that, just come on out, come ask questions, come talk to us. I think that's the biggest thing. You can read anything you want to online. They have access to ChatGPT all day long. They can put in any kind of fake information that they want to. But if you really want to know what's going on in the school district and you really want, answers to some of your questions, please just ask us. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not going to lie to you. I don't know where that comment came from, but we're not going to lie to you. We're all about being transparent and open, and we don't mind having conversations, whether you're for something or against something, you have issues, or if you don't, you just want to give, your peace of mind, just come talk to us. We don't care. Our doors are always open. We'll listen to you. We'll hear you out. We won't get mad. We're pretty calm people for the most part, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of, I think, answers a bunch of the stuff that I've been seeing online. If you have any more questions, or if there's more things that come up as we move forward, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. The board will meet on February 12th, correct? At 6 p.m. here at the administration building. So if you're interested, you can always come to that meeting. It is open to the public, just like all of our board meetings are. And we'd love to hear just your opinion on it. And, we're going to be posting a little bit more information. There's probably going to be a couple videos that we have made that go out kind of just highlighting some of the issues we're having in our district. You'll start seeing a little bit more about some of the issues going on at the high school, just as information for our community to see the reality of what's going on over there. It's not really to push an agenda in one way or another. It's just information to show you how bad it actually is over there. And so, be informed. That's all we ask of you, is to be a correctly informed voter as we go forward, and we'll see what the board decides on February 12th. And so after that decision, whether or not we go forward with the bond or not, we will update our community on that information. And then, I don't know, just keep watching our Facebook, read the articles in the newspaper, and we're just going to continue on with these conversations until we're told not to by people above us. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in today. Reminder, you can catch us anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can watch us on Facebook and YouTube. Keep up with our conversations, even though, we don't have a solid decision yet on whether or not we're going forward with the bond. We're still going to be highlighting, some of the things that we're doing in our district, some of the areas that are in need in our district. And so lots of conversations that are going to keep happening. So just keep in touch and keep in tuned, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.